There have been mixed reactions in the past weeks on Minister of Finance Nhlanhla Nene's confession to private meetings with the Gupta family. Nene publicly apologized on Friday after he failed to fully disclose the extent of his interactions with the family. During his testimony before the State Capture Inquiry last Wednesday, Nene revealed for the first time that he's had several private meetings with the Guptas at their Saxonwold home and their business premises. The Mail and Guardian is also reporting that his son, Siyabonga, was involved in a deal with the Public Investment Corporation, PIC, when Nene was its chairperson. Joining us from our Pretoria studio is political analyst, Professor Dirk Kotze. A very good morning to you, Prof. A busy week politically. I know we're talking about Mr. Nhlanhla Nene, but just to touch on yesterday's media briefing by Ms. Patricia de Lille that she will be suing Mr. Fowl. What are your thoughts on this story?
Well, she's coming to the end of her term now as the mayor of Cape Town, and I think what she wants to do now, given the fact that she has come to a so-called an agreement with the DA, that it is now she wants to deal now with personal matters in order still to try to revive or reinstate her reputation as a politician. And I think this is what we are going to see now in the next in the near future. We don't know what her political future is, whether she wants to continue within the DA, whether she wants to participate in next year's election, for example. That's all still unclear. And I think what her first priority now is to see to what extent the accusations that were made by people within the DA as the mayor. So it's about merely restoring her dignity, and I think that's her main priority.
You say that we talk to you from Pretoria, you're closer to power, and perhaps you're able to tell us some of the things that we're all wondering. What do you think will be happening to Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene?
Well, according to reports, Minister Nene asked President Ramaphosa this weekend to relieve him from his position. Now, we haven't heard anything from President Ramaphosa yet. So it is very much up in the air now. President Ramaphosa has now quite a number of options. He can either say, well, if he will follow this request from Minister Nene, or he can say, given the fact that you have apologized at the commission, at the same time, the fact that you've offered your resignation, that is more than enough in terms of making an ethical gesture that we can keep you. I think that the big difference between December 2015, when he was dismissed by President Zuma, and the current situation is that if he leaves his office, it's not going to have that same impact on the rand and the financial markets in general, because it's predictable, it's something which is in the pipeline, it is not against his wishes, and it is something which is seen as for the benefit of South Africa in general, and not in order to manipulate the position of the Minister of Finance. So there's a big difference between the two.
A lot of analysis has been put out there about the fact that this is the minister who's refused to sign, but he's also the minister whose credibility is now being questioned. How should the country be viewing Nhlanhla Nene going forward?
Well, I think, again, it's a mixed record that he has. On the one hand, he now conceded that he met the Guptas several times between 2010 and 2017. That was when he was still the deputy minister. The situation changed quite dramatically when he became minister, and it appears as if he cut all his links with the Gupta family. In the end, he lost his position because of them, because he didn't want to implement the nuclear deal with the Russians on the one hand, as well as to introduce new routes for SAA, which would have benefited the Guptas. So therefore, it's a mixed record. I think what is the more lasting image is the fact that ultimately he was dismissed because of the Gupta influence in the ANC and in government. The fact that he apologized, and I think we have to remind ourselves that even President Ramaphosa apologized for his involvement in the Marikana situation. We also think about other politicians who apologized and survived, like President Bill Clinton. So it's not an unknown phenomenon for politicians to apologize and then to continue with their careers. But what we are seeing here is that Minister Nene is not clinging to his position, but rather say it is in the hands of President Ramaphosa to decide what he wants to do.
So should Mr. Nene go, it might be the finance seat that's left vacant. But following the revelations at the Raymond Zondo Commission, there have been calls for other ministers who've been implicated to go. So should we see a reshuffle, or are there any chances of a reshuffle instead of just a replacement of a minister who's outgoing?
I think President Ramaphosa will be hesitant to do that. No, there are several ministers who have been implicated. That is very well known. Minister Mokunyani, Minister Dlamini, and others who have been very close to President Zuma, who have had contacts with the Guptas also. So that is not the real fact, the real issue. I think the main issue here is that President Ramaphosa doesn't want to create uncertainty now, or to become involved in the internal situation of the ANC, where there's some form of balance struck at the moment before next year's election. I think after next year's election, obviously then he can reconstitute his cabinet. But I think until the election, which is predictably somewhere around about May, that he will most possibly try to refrain from becoming involved in the internal power balance within the ANC at the moment. And therefore, whether it is ministers, whether it is the Secretary General, who openly associated himself with former President Zuma, that to a large extent, I think President Ramaphosa tries to steer away from becoming directly involved in it, and rather wait until after the election.
You said earlier that the impact this time will not be the same, but Minister Nene was a pivotal part of President Cyril Ramaphosa's plans to revive the economy that were announced recently. How will this process be impacted?
I don't think much. You know, what we are actually seeing, what's evolving now, is that President Ramaphosa is actually the Super Minister of Finance. Nene is, in a sense, has become his assistant. So it depends so much on what the minister is doing compared to the time when either Minister Pravin Gordhan was the Minister of Finance or Minister Nene, where they were the main driving forces of the Treasury and also managing the Treasury, as well as designing the macroeconomic policy. Currently, it is President Ramaphosa who is doing that, and therefore the public profile of Minister Nene is much lower than during the time of President Zuma, and therefore also the impact, I think, will also be less, because the focus is now in the first instance on what President Ramaphosa is saying, what he's doing. There was last week was the job summit, coming now is the investment conference, and all of those are actually driven by President Ramaphosa himself.
Prof, should Mr. Nene go, who do you think would be his replacement?
I think that's the main question, because the Deputy Minister is not appropriate for this, Minister Buthelezi. He has been, there were lots of questions were raised about him when he was first appointed, when President Ramaphosa appointed him. And therefore, he will certainly be not the person, I would say, who will be most appropriate for this position. He doesn't have the public profile, is not as prominent as a Minister of Finance should be. And therefore, I guess some of the other ministers, full ministers, will most possibly be moved over. I won't be completely surprised if, in the last instance, Minister Gordhan is brought back, if there's no other option for President Ramaphosa.
Prof, as always, absolutely value your thoughts, and perhaps at another time we'll get, as the story unfolds, we'll get another chance to talk to you.